So we have a big, heavy agenda at the ECB. We have made significant progress in 24 in bringing down inflation, and hopefully 25 is the year when we are on target as expected and as planned in our strategy. Of course, we will continue our efforts to ensure that that inflation stabilizes sustainably at that 2% medium-term target.
Stabilises sustainably at 2%. Getting the alliteration in there, but can she deliver on the sustainability around 2% is going to be a key question. Let's get more on the outlook that the ECB is looking at with our reporter in Berlin, Ollie Crook. Ollie, that's the challenge almost for the ECB at the moment. While the Fed is struggling to get to 2%, the danger is that actually the ECB struggles to keep inflation at 2%.
Yeah, so listen, Guy, I mean, the expectation this year, we had a couple of prints below 2% this year, but it's really about getting it sort of at that 2%, around that 2% level, sort of sustainably. And if you look at Bloomberg Intelligence in terms of what they're expecting for inflation for 2025, the average in 2024 was 2.4%. The average going into 2025, they're expecting that to be 1.7%. So really moving in the direction that the ECB wants things to be doing. What it then prompts, Guy, is the question of where the sort of neutral rate is for the ECB. And that is going to be a sort of lively debate going into this year. I mean, Bloomberg Intelligence sees it at around 2%. So if you think about the fact that we're at about 3% now on the deposit rate, and we're expecting a cut, another cut, a third cut, and maybe a fourth cut all in a row, that gets you to 2% pretty fast. And the question is then, what are you doing after that? The other thing we need to watch out for 2025 on the ECB is also the Monetary Policy Strategic Review. They're doing another one of these. They did one in 2021. That was the first one they did since in about 20 years, and came from that a new sort of definition of what price stability is. That's where we got this sort of idea that it doesn't need to be exactly 2%. It can kind of overshoot or undershoot through time. So it's really important when they come out with these new definitions. And we're expecting their sort of strategic review on that in the back half of 2025.
So, Ollie, what's the risk factor here? I mean, I feel like the spoken but unspoken uncertainty is Donald Trump, but what else?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly Donald Trump. I mean, let's start with just some of the structural parts of the economy, right? There was a lot of concern from the hawks on services and wages still being a little bit too hot in the economy, could be sort of pushing inflation up. But actually, all of those figures are kind of moving in the right direction. The other one is energy prices, right? We've been talking about the Ukraine gas transit deal. That's 15 billion cubic meters of gas that's off the market immediately. Again, this was sort of flagged, but it's had an impact on the gas market. We're going to get a much colder January. This is where sort of ECB forecasting and weather forecasting go together, because we get to see those gas deposits go down. That brings prices of electricity up. And of course, the third one is the trade war, right? If there is a trade war between the United States and Europe, there is, of course, that upward inflationary pressure. But there's another side of this coin. If there is a trade war between China and the United States, all of this sort of material, all of these products in China that were destined to go to the United States could actually be rerouted to Europe. And we heard Klaus Knot come out and sort of flag this a couple of days ago, saying that there's a chance that China will start offering their goods to Europe at lower and lower prices. They're already seeing it happening with steel, and in that way, China would be basically exporting its disinflation here to Europe, so potentially a downside risk to European inflation, which would of course be potentially good for consumers, but would be really not very good for companies, particularly when they're trying to sort of reevaluate their competitiveness on the global scale.